The Two Oceans Ultramarathon is undoubtedly one of South Africa's most iconic races. First run in the 1970s as a long training run in preparation for the Comrades Marathon, this event soon turned into an iconic race of its own, affording runners the opportunity to see breathtaking landscapes up close. This is exactly why over the years it has been entitled the world's most beautiful marathon. To be rewarded with the breathtaking cliffs, panoramic views of Chapman's Peak and also Hout Bay's harbour, you first have to do a fair bit of climbing. Running the Two Oceans Marathon requires a strategic approach, whether you're out there just to survive it or to nail a personal best time. Running a 56-kilometre ultramarathon is not the easiest day out, not ever. Added to the mix roughly 700 metres of total elevation gain over the 56-kilometre distance, and you have your work cut out for you. The key to survival or achieving a best time comes down to the mix of strategy and discipline. I'll take you through the route and point out some of the most important things to remember for your 2024 ultramarathon. I'm David Ashworth from Team Ashworth Coaching. Use your watch. Runners from all over South Africa and all over the world congregate to run the Two Oceans Marathon each year. The urge to race and to better your previous time dangles like a carrot as you toe the line. Feeling fresh from a taper in your training mileage, a lower altitude possibly, and even some carbo loading to replenish those glycogen stores, leaves you feeling fresh to tackle the distance. It's difficult to hear the voice of reason in your head, your coach's voice maybe, telling you that you must go easy from the gun. The atmosphere is electric, and so many runners leave the start line as though setting out to run a club time trial or a park run, only to fade in the first few kilometers and suffer through to the finish line. Use your watch to slow yourself down, not to run fast. Once your legs start hurting and you hit the wall on the first climb, it's too late. Take a headlamp. Last year, I regret not taking a headlamp to the start for the first few hours of the race. It was pitch dark due to load shedding. The race started at 10 minutes past 5, earlier than in previous years. There are many hazards on the road, mostly unavoidable. Uneven surfaces, cat's eyes, traffic calming bumps, slippery patches at water points, and fellow runners or pedestrians. Yes, carrying this extra weight for 56 kilometers is not ideal, but a visit to the ER is less ideal. Protect yourself against a race or potentially a career-ending fall. Relax and find your rhythm. The first 21 kilometers of the Two Oceans Ultra is fairly flat, easy running. You start in Newlands on the corner of Dean Street and you head up along Main Road, passing through Claremont and Wynberg, en route to Muizenberg at approximately 16 kilometers. This is where you'll catch your first glimpse of the ocean. By now it'll be light enough to do away with your headlamp and discard unwanted warm clothing if the weather allows. You are more exposed to the wind at this point of the race. From Muizenberg to Fishhoek, there are a number of short hills or bumps that will surprise you after running flat for almost 16 kilometers from the start. Don't expend too much power on these, keep your effort consistent. At Fishhoek, you have successfully reached the half marathon mark. At the traffic circle at the far end of Fishhoek, you'll take a right turn, inland, towards Noordhoek. This section is a gradual uphill. The first big tester. After a brief detour into the suburb of Sun Valley, you'll be directed across Oudtshoorn, the dreaded alternative route if Chapman's Peak Drive happens to be closed due to safety concerns. Hopefully, you'll be directed to Noordhoek Road, marking the 25-kilometer point in the race. Your first big tester, Little Chappies, comes after the halfway mark at approximately 30 kilometers. It's a steep climb that tapers off slightly and brings a bit of relief. Don't be fooled, Chapman's Peak Drive is undulating with a few tough climbs that'll take you up to 34 kilometers. Soak up the spectacular views and take your mind off the race for a while if you can. This is Cape Town at its best. The downhill will make or break your race. From the top of Chapman's Peak Drive, a long downhill approximately 5 kilometers ushers you into Hout Bay. This downhill stretch is one of the most crucial points in the Two Oceans Ultra. You may find it irresistible to drop the handbrake and to fly down this section after so much grinding on the hills to reach Chapman's Peak. But be warned, if you want to survive the biggest climbs ahead and you want to enjoy the final kilometers of the race, then take my advice. Ease back on this downhill section. Shorten your stride and let the foolish runners pass you without giving chase. Bruce Fordyce once said, "What you lose on the ups, you cannot make up on the downs." To the marathon mark. As you enter Hout Bay at 39 kilometers, you're greeted with a hype of activity. With no substantial spectators between Noordhoek and Hout Bay due to the inaccessibility by vehicles on race day, you are immediately struck by the crowds in Hout Bay. Don't be tempted to start running faster with a cheer of supporters. The flat section through Hout Bay, you'll notice, in fact is a gradual uphill gradient. Only 3 kilometers to the marathon mark, but it's a gradual climb that gets steeper as you progress. Don't give up as you approach the marathon mark. The route flattens out and you can see the arch. It's roughly 500 meters away. Let this be your visual target, but continue to hold yourself back. Congratulations, 14 kilometers to go. From approximately 43.5 kilometers, the biggest of the climbs begins. Constantia Nek. Almost 3 kilometers of relentless uphill awaits. Keep moving forward no matter what. You'll know you have reached the top when you see the traffic circle, normally packed with spectators and TV crew. This intersection is at 46.5 kilometers. Breathe a sigh of relief. Grab a drink and keep moving towards the finish. It's at this point of the race that it's safe to push the pace a little bit. This is only possible if you have been conservative in the first part of the race. If not, you have no choice but to try and maintain a consistent pace or to survive the final section to the finish. The final 10 kilometers begins with a winding road and welcoming shade by the tree canopies overhead through the Cecilia Forest on Rhodes Drive. The winding road has a prominent camber that causes the ITB and shins to niggle. It's best to run on the shoulder of the road, on the flatter sections, to avoid much of the slope as possible. As you start the descent to Kirstenbosch Gardens at around 52 kilometers, be cautious of the gentle climb that immediately follows. Shortly after Kirstenbosch, you'll be directed to make a left turn onto the M3 at the 53 kilometer mark. You have less than 3 kilometers to go, and it's the home straight. In the final kilometers on the M3, you'll be faced with Chet's Hill, a small incline that would normally be unnoticeable, except for the fact that you've just completed 55 kilometers with some seriously tough hills. The off-ramp and the entrance to the UCT grounds is now in sight, and you are channeled onto the grass, and the finish awaits you. All that is left is to enjoy the last few moments as you cross the finish line and collect your finisher's medal. If you take the time to analyze the Two Oceans Ultra Marathon route, to plan your race and strategy well, you'll be in the best position possible, not only to survive the race, but to finish the race in a personal best time. Don't throw the plan out the window on race day because you're feeling good at the start. Everyone feels good at the start. It's always best to still feel good at Hout Bay, and even better to feel great at the finish. All the best with your race.